You're listening to Mind Your Business, hosted by me, David Pawsey, and recorded in the Deep Social podcast studio in Crawley Innovation Centre. Join me as I talk to a variety of business leaders, innovators and artists from Crawley and beyond to find out what makes them tick. Thanks for listening, and please check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and all the other major podcast channels. Welcome to another episode of Mind Your Business, another fantastic episode with the incredible Sandra Peat. Say Sandra's a marketing and branding expert. Doesn't do it justice at all, because you get some marketing experts and then you get marketing experts that have written a PhD or in the process of writing a PhD on brand behaviour. And Sandra's worked for the biggest names in fast moving consumer goods: Red Bull, Goose, Bacardi, M&M's, Mars. So some of the biggest names. So she gave some very valuable lessons about marketing, regardless of the size of your business.
Having a really, really clear idea of why you exist, who you exist to serve, and knowing that customer. And then the other thing that's really important is understanding not just your audience, but your community. And
also, inspirational tale of getting over breast cancer. So thanks for coming on, Sandra. I'm sure that you'll all enjoy this episode. Well, thank you for joining me, Sandra.
Thanks, Dave.
It's obviously, we've known each other a while, but it's been quite a while since we've seen each other. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for coming on. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you for inviting me.
The first question that we always start off with is, what is your business and how did you get into it?
Do you know what? I never thought that would be a really difficult question, but I do struggle to describe what I do. I think the easiest way to make sense of what I do is I call myself a brand strategist, and I have now what I call a portfolio career. My background is in marketing and advertising and branding as a strategist, and I'm now doing a few different things. I'm doing a PhD looking at how brands behave and how it drives growth in businesses. And I do consulting work around that under my aptly named brand behavior business consultancy. So we do all sorts of different kinds of work, from community strategy for apparel brands through to positioning work. But really the thread is about how do we embed consistent, coherent, sensible, valuable behaviors within businesses so that it delivers good outcomes. And then alongside that, I also do executive coaching, which originally I always thought was something I did sort of on the side. But actually, the more I do the work around creating good behaviors within businesses or looking at how brands behave, I realize leadership behaviors are really, really important. So under that sort of business, which is called Leadership Potential, I coach C-suite people as they go through big changes in their organizations. So I'm currently coaching a VP of marketing as they're rolling out their new positioning and their new branding, for instance, in their business. So there are a few different pieces. Oh, I've forgotten one. There's one more as well, in fact, which is I'm UK partner for an insights business called Spikes. Right. And we track those rare moments where brands actually excite consumers. So I guess the easiest way to understand it is brand behavior is kind of like the fulcrum. It's the thing that sits in the middle, and everything sort of sits around this idea of supporting businesses to grow through brand behavior.
Right. A lot there. As you said, portfolio career, and I know that you've sort of worked agency side, client side. You've, launched some sort of, you've talked about marketing businesses, but I know that you've sort of launched other businesses over time. What are there common challenges for any business when it comes to marketing and branding? Does budget really matter? Or, is there more flexibility when it comes to sort of creating a branding strategy for a smaller business, because they can be more nimble?
Gosh, that's a big question. There's two schools of thought. I think branding for big businesses, has its own ecosystem around it, and that is financially driven. Brand strategy and marketing for smaller businesses really comes back to a couple of different things for me. And actually, these are true for larger businesses, but you're just less connected to them because there's more people involved. And they are really having a really, really clear idea of why you exist, who you exist to serve, and knowing that customer, and understanding how your experience, the experience of your brand, brings that purpose to life, essentially through its behaviour. And then the other thing that's really important is understanding not just your audience, but your community. Who are the people who are part of your ecosystem, who help you grow your brand, who amplify, and magnify the things that you do through earned media and word of mouth. And I think when you're a small business, that's really, really important to understand, because it's those amplifiers, I call them fire starters, that create disproportionate impact for actions that you might do. So when you're dealing with smaller budgets, it's always a challenge. I mean, interestingly, I think it makes you a better marketeer if you've got smaller budgets, because you've got to be more creative. So, depending on where you sit on that fence, some people really like that. But that's, I think ultimately that idea of building up a community with a really strong culture drives traction in terms of creating that reach and people understanding your brand and wanting to engage with it.
One of the things you said there was sort of community, and it does seem that marketers and, well, businesses in general are now talking more about communities rather than audience or prospects. And you sort of reference on my previous guests, Jody, who's written a book, and he talks about, being divisive with your marketing. I mean, you've sort of worked for some huge brands, if you don't mind me saying. So Red Bull, Grey Goose, Bacardi, I've written them down, Mars, M&M's, Grey Goose. I mean, Red Bull in particular has, a very sort of specific brand. And, they were not quite divisive, but I guess they've, their community and their branding and the message is very much extreme sports. So, I mean, can you sort of talk about how Red Bull's brand evolved, and if, sort of how, I mean, because I think, they started off as Red Bull Gives You Wings and then slowly sort of moved into the more extreme sports, sort of lots of sponsorships, viral videos, that sort of thing. I mean, what sort of decisions go into, positioning a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we talk about Red Bull as an example, it's actually a fantastic example of brand growth. And, I think right back in the beginning, in the early days of Red Bull, I think it was more by accident rather than design. I mean, what they did design, actually, to be fair to them, very, very well, was a very, very simple, universal premise of, as you said, Red Bull gives you wings, or giving wings to people and ideas, which was their positioning, essentially. And the beautiful thing about that line is that it had a brand truth to it. They literally gave wings in some cases, but also facilitated ideas. But then there was also a product truth in there as well. It's an energy drink. It gives you energy. So that beautiful symbiosis is really, really powerful. And lots, brands love that and they look for that. And it was right in there for their business right from the very, very beginning. And it created an incredible foundation to build upon. The other thing that is really unique about the way Red Bull has grown as a business is that they, the brand, as you see it, is also the culture of the organization within it. Now, that is really, really rare because, people, you cut them and they bleed Red Bull, metaphorically. But, they spend a lot of energy and time creating this culture that is essentially the culture of the brand as you see it externally as well. So, and that is an interesting approach, because lots of businesses would look at that and go, well, that's a waste of money. Why do I need to take, that team to see that extreme sports event, when it's not directly connected to their job? Or why do they need to work at that event? Because actually that when I was there, and it's certainly the case, I think still, the people who work in the office would work on the events, the big extreme events. So everyone pulled together and were pulled into it. So that the marrying of those two things together, of building a culture that exists that delivers the brand externally, gives you a foundation that is almost unmatchable. I mean, and the other thing you mentioned as well was around sponsorships and content. Well, actually, Red Bull's a privately owned company. It was owned by one man until he passed away relatively recently, with very, very, I beg your pardon, and a Thai family as well, who are a major shareholder as well. They had very deep pockets, and they owned the IP and the events that they put on most of the time, and even the involvement in Formula One. Red Bull Racing was part of Red Bull, certainly when I was there way back when. So it gives you a lot more control as to how your brand shows up, and even then you take it to content, as you mentioned as well. Well, that content came from a play because the brand decided that they were going to set up a media house. So no longer were they just an energy drink; they're a media brand, and arguably their media brand is as big, if not bigger, than their energy drink, their sort of product. But the beautiful thing about it is it all feeds together. Like the ecosystem of that brand is genius, and lots of businesses have tried to copy it with varying levels of success.
Sorry to interrupt, but I thought now would be a good time to tell you about the podcast and content creation services we offer at Deep Social. Not only can we record and edit your business podcast, which is a fantastic way of sharing your expertise and building deep bonds with your target audience, but we can transform each episode into blog content, white papers, LinkedIn posts, video shorts, a whole selection of marketing content that drives more leads to your business. So drop me an email at david@deepsocial.co.uk to discuss how we can elevate your content marketing success. Now I'll let you get back to the episode. How have Red Bull got it right when other businesses get it wrong? And I mean, there's been a lot of news about Brewdog that it's like, well, kind of the external view of that brand has pretty much seemed to be in the reverse of what's happened internally. And obviously I don't want to, there's lots of other examples of brands that don't get it right, so I don't want to just focus on Brewdog, but as I say, it's been in the news a lot. Is it generally founder-led values, or is it, where can a board sit down and kind of create brand values, or does it always need to sort of come from one sort of figurehead?
It's a really, really interesting question. And I think what you see in a lot of businesses that start with a founder with a really strong vision is they are a bit like the Pied Piper. They take people with them, people want to be part of it, and they create that momentum. So another example of that, of a brand I've worked on, is a brand called Kind Snacks. You might remember seeing the Kind bars. Started by a really inspirational founder in the States, I think about 15, 20 years ago, was sold then to Mars, another great company, but very, very big company made up of a lot of brands. And, the big challenges for when businesses, big multinational businesses like that buy founder-led businesses, they kind of lose their heart. They lose their way. And the irony of the situation is that businesses like Mars and Unilever and Coca-Cola is another business that's bought those kind of founder-led brands before, buy those businesses because of their really strong North Star, their really strong values driven by that founder, and yet they kind of crush it. They dissipate it. I would struggle to find examples of brands that have managed to maintain their heart once they've been bought by a big multinational, because that founder vision, either the founder leaves or the founder is less involved because he's made usually a stack of money. So it's to your question, is it usually founder led? I think there is probably a pretty strong correlation to founders having done that, but it's not impossible,
I mean, one of the things you said earlier, sorry, I am jumping
Yeah, that's
around
all
a
right.
bit. You sort of mentioned about how not having a budget can make you a more creative marketer. So much of, well, the business and marketing conversation at the moment is dominated by AI. And I know that I think I've seen a couple of your posts and some video, one of your podcasts, where, I can't remember, apologies, and the lady you're interviewing, but, you know, she sort of said, well, AI can make you a better marketer. And I know that sort of when you talk about brand behavior and, you know, we've sort of talked about, well, you've got the marketing side, but you need to be living those values within with AI. And, you know, so, I mean, one of the things you talked about is how, you know, how does AI sort of affect that brand behavior? I mean, my understanding of that is, well, you know, you don't want a rogue chatbot that's not sort of delivering customer service in the way that, you know, previously they might have portrayed themselves as having excellent customer service. I mean, is that right? Am I on the right lines or?
I mean, I guess there's a couple of different things in there. If we're talking about AI and marketing, I mean, I think at this point, you know, what AI has proven to do is to speed things up, to take out a lot of the drudgery, and also to allow lots of businesses to produce, particularly big businesses who have really in-depth customer experiences that they might need to support. The level of content and the amount of content that they need to produce is not physically able to be done by humans. So you know, there's a sense that AI can really, for instance, in that particular point, can really step in and help to deliver the kind of the amount of content and the amount of personalization, because that's what ultimately what AI opens up. It opens up the ability to deeply personalize content, if we look in that sphere, to consumer needs, which can only be a good thing. But you know, as we all know, AI is not without its challenges, and less in the marketing sphere, but more in the kind of critical thinking sphere. The biggest challenge I see with AI is around maintaining and holding on to your cognitive sovereignty. And what I mean by cognitive sovereignty is how do you hold on to your critical thoughts and your critical thinking and allow AI to stretch your knowledge without taking away your ability to hold that idea as your own? My academic world, that is a really, really important topic. And I think it's true in the world of business and innovation as well, because you know, we want AI to stretch us, we want AI to do things faster, but we don't ever want to lose track or lose control of the thing that makes us human. So it's a fine line we're walking at the moment. I mean, you know, we are dancing slightly with the devil. I think everyone sort of recognizes that in some way.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a very good way of putting it. I mean, there's like one example that really bugs me in that I know someone that uses ChatGPT for LinkedIn commenting, automating LinkedIn commenting. And there was one where it was essentially someone had talked about their sister being diagnosed with breast cancer. And I could tell from, you know, the structure of the response. I'm like, oh, well, that's ChatGPT, because it's literally taken line by line of the original post and responded to it. And it's like, well, you would have responded with the bit about the sister, not. And I'm like, that you've essentially outsourced your empathy. And I mean, yeah, that I mean, I've as you know, a writer, I use it. But there is big element of me where I'm like, do I get too reliant on it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I try and use it more in if I've already written content about a topic, then I'll be like, right, well, it's got my tone of voice. So ChatGPT, can you know, rewrite this for a different format? But I mean, yeah, I do worry sort of, well, I mean, you know, we're going to get a bit off topic, but sort of in terms of chatbots and children being influenced by And, I can sort of understand why, especially if, you're in a position where you are slightly isolated. ChatGPT can provide guidance. But, I mean, there's... Oh, I think we are scraping the surface with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a business and brand perspective, I mean, it's an incredible tool. One thing that I see through my work with Spikes, with excitement points, is we've done quite a lot of work looking at digital experiences and how AI can supplement customer experience, which is obviously a huge topic. Customer experience is massively expensive to do with real humans, real life humans. And yet AI can facilitate that process when it's done well. But there are a couple of things that absolutely need to be in place. You need really good governance. So, exactly to your point, if, for instance, you're dealing with an issue which is about bereavement on customer, the red flag has to be straight to a human being, because that is not like, if we're talking about telecommunications, that is not changing your phone provider. That is a topic that requires humanity and empathy. So one of the things that is incredibly important from a brand behavior point of view is governance, actually, is having a really good framework and system that sits behind your AI so that it can act appropriately and on behalf of your brand, because it is a brand actor in many cases, in the right circumstances, and also know when absolutely to step away. And interesting, there's another really great example, actually, of Klarna. Do you know so Klarna is it's not debt management, is it? It's more
credit provider.
Credit provider.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a credit provider, and they have realised that if they use a AI bot to follow up with people when they haven't paid payment, they're more likely to get payment from their customers if they haven't paid. And because in excitement points, we ask people, have you recently had a positive experience, essentially, with a brand, shorthanding it. The fact that you're not feeling like you're being hounded by a human being, you avoid some of the shame of not paying for whatever your reason are, and you actually come away with a more positive experience of that brand. So, knowing when AI needs to show up with humanity and knowing when it absolutely needs to be much more mechanical and much more kind of non-human, if you like, and obviously non-human, is actually a really important nuance of how AI is deployed in customer services, at least.
And I can give quite an interesting example of that. We've had, as I say, we used to be neighbours, so sort of it's quite a rural area. The broadband's rubbish.
Yeah.
It's slowly getting better, but we've had some awful issues to the extent we're like, right, let's look at Starlink. Maybe satellite is like the best way we're going to get decent internet. And then my wife sort of phoned up, and basically it was a chatbot she was dealing with. And it was like, well, the reason I'm coming to these guys is because we've had awful customer service, rarely, two people talking. Like, it was the human element that's lacking. So as a result, I guess we were ready to sort of pull the trigger on that transaction and give them our business. But then sort of the fact that we weren't dealing with a human, even though obviously Elon's not, I don't know, quite the Tony Stark kind of visionary that we perhaps thought he was a few years ago. But it was like an interesting example of we would have been more likely to have continued with that sale investment or whatever if it had been a human sort of that we were dealing with at the start.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. There's some statistic that says that we quote quite a lot in excitement points that 80% of businesses think they're customer focused, yet only 8% of customers think businesses are customer focused. So that massive gap between what businesses think they're doing right and what customers actually receive and what their perception is huge. And there's a real need to try and close that, to understand the positive experiences consumers do and customers do have with brands and the value it has to them, so that businesses can replicate it. And that's exactly what Excitement Points exists to do.
Sorry, I'm still thinking about our broadband issues. But I mean, the thing is, and it has been resolved now. And we've changed providers as a result. And I'm just sort of thinking the guy that has finally fixed the issue, he might have even come out to us before, because he would have been contracted by whatever provider. But it was the fact that he actually stopped and listened to the exact issue we were having, rather than, well, we follow this process.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's not showing any issues.
Yeah.
Follow this process, that's not showing any issues. And it's like, well, actually, yeah, he listened to us as a human rather than following like a diagnosis procedure.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, back to you, Sandra, rather than my internet issues. I mean, you've obviously sort of talked about working for lots of different brands, different size brands. I mean, what has been sort of the biggest challenges that you've faced during your career?
Oh gosh, I mean, that is a massive question in of itself. I think actually, probably the biggest challenge I've ever had in my career was coming back to work after having cancer. So I had breast cancer in 2022, and then chemotherapy at the end of that year. So I feel like I had like the never-ending lockdown. So we came out of lockdown, and then I was diagnosed. And I had quite a high-pressure job at the time, and I rushed. I obviously took a bit of time out, but I really, really, really rushed back to work far, far sooner than I ought to have, because I thought that my job was at risk. And lo and behold, 6 to 9 months later, I was made redundant because I wasn't well. So I think that probably has been the biggest challenge of my career, has been coming back from that and reinventing myself and finding the things that inspire me, that I can be useful for, that I can build my community around. It's led to lots of me having quite a diverse career, having a really different attitude to work than I would have had maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, no, it's sort of a personal one, but it's a work challenge, and by far and away the hardest thing that's affected my work.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad, obviously, that you are fully recovered.
Super well.
I mean, how obviously that would have changed your perspective on life in so many different ways, but I mean, I think. And I've not sort of been through that experience myself, but I have had experiences of, making myself ill through work and then realising that actually you are completely dispensable to them.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know that obviously wellness has always been a passion of yours, but I mean, did that sort of focus, did that make you focus more on, I guess, on your health more than finances?
Yeah, I mean, I still like money. Don't get. Let's be honest. Still love money. 100%. I mean, I think that working for yourself, having a portfolio career, following your passions is not an easy route. I mean, it's not. It is in my mind, it's much easier to go to work every day and just do as you're told and do the job and get the money at the end of the month. And, it may not be the most satisfying version of your life, but it's definitely easier. The plus side of working for yourself and being your own boss is that you can use your time however you want. So you get to choose who you work with.
Which podcasts you come on, but also how you start your day. Yeah. So I have a really strong meditation practice. I start my day the same way I've always done it for the last 5 or 6 years, which is meditation, journaling, and exercise. And as a 50-something woman out the other side of breast cancer, postmenopausal, I don't think I'd be sane
or able to achieve all the things I'm doing right now unless I had that really firm practice in place. And the beautiful thing is I still work hard. I mean, because I'm doing something I love, but my work day starts when those things finish.
Yeah.
And I feel really strongly about that.
I mean, can you sort of go into a bit more detail about it? I mean, like this morning, actually I've done it a few times today because it's been a bit of a stressful day, but I mean, I've got the Calm app, so I do like 5 minutes of breathing. And it's one of those things where I dip in and out of it. And I know that when I'm out of it, that's when I start to feel frazzled.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes, sorry. Tell me about your mindfulness. I mean, what order do you do them in, and how much of the morning is taken up by it?
Yeah, I mean, so as I mentioned before, I coach mainly at the moment women in leadership, particularly as they step up into C-suite roles, and not by choice, it's just the way it has ended up being that way. And what I find is that people, particularly women, but I think people who are very senior, are very good at their jobs. They're very, very good at doing, but they don't spend much time being or going back into themselves and understanding how they want to present themselves to the world and who they want to be today, and asking themselves a very simple question: what do I need? And so coming back to my meditation practice, which is something that I recommend to all my clients, even if they sort of slightly dismiss it up front, I challenge them to do it because it really is the best 15 minutes you'll get in your day. So I don't spend hours doing this stuff. I don't have I don't have hours. I get up early, I make a cup of tea, I go and sit down for 15 minutes. I ask myself mentally, what do I need today? And then I will spend 15 minutes meditating, and then I have a journal. And when I finish meditating, I write whatever is in my head. And I can promise you that whatever I was thinking about before I started the 15 minutes has very little to what actually comes out on that page. And for me, that is such an important grounding practice. It helps me stay out of my head and out of the loop of your saboteurs. We've all got saboteurs that, they exist to keep us safe, but they're different parts of our psyche that trip us up. It helps me to have a little bit of emotional distance so that I'm able to stay grounded and centered.
And I know that you sort of swim and do yoga. I mean, what is your sort of exercise? I mean, is it yoga every day or? Yeah,
so I do quite a real range of things. There's a lot of yoga in there, probably 2 or 3 times a week. I do weights, strength training, weights, HIIT. And then I also, partly because I've got a dog, needs exercising, but I also go for a walk most mornings in nature. And I really, really notice if I don't get some time in nature, even like 25 minutes before I get going. I mean, the dog is the best reason ever to get out the door because you can't be lazy. You have to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we live in a really lovely part of the world that is utterly beautiful at the moment. So it's no stress getting out nice and early and in the bluebells, is it?
Well, I'm glad you said that because Oscar, my son, who you know,
yes.
But both of them get so sick of me saying, "Oh, you're so lucky to grow up around here."
Yeah.
But and I think the thing is, wherever you grow up, you're like, shit,
exactly.
But when they're older, they'll realise
maybe
how lucky they are.
Yeah, so lucky. But the other thing I do, which is to your question as well, is I'm sauna obsessive. So
right.
I mean, it's so goddamn fashionable at the moment, but God, it really changes things, doesn't it? To be able to go and, particularly through the winter where it's been so dark and awful, to be able to, really change your state by having a sauna and then go swimming in the sea.
Yeah.
I mean, I say swimming. I use that term very loosely. I mean, dunking my body in the water and then getting the hell out.
Cold water immersion.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I mean, it is sort of something that I've talked about pretty well when we had Ben on, me. When Ben came on, I mean, that's sort of, he's got an entire business about it. But Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where, well, like one of the places I swim, it's only open like 9 till 10 in the mornings. And yeah, and it's just so frustrating. Like, well, it's just not a convenient time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like when I've made the effort and sort of squeezed it into the day, it's just like, why am I doing this all the time?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beauty of working for yourself, right? Like, make it a practice. If it keeps your head on straight, and, you know, because everything else plays out better if you just take that time, even though it feels like a massive pain in the ass.
Well, there's this quote that I always remember, and it was a Buddhist monk, and he says something about, well, you know, it's like, why are you so calm, master? And it's like, well, because I meditate for an hour every morning. So, oh, well, what do you do when you don't have time to meditate for an hour in the morning? He says, well, I meditate for 2 hours. But it, you know, and that's the thing. It's sort of, whether it is exercise or mindfulness, when you do sort of, or, you know, just whether it's a HIIT session or, you know, 20-minute walk in the forest, it is just sort of getting these little micro breaks in that make the rest of it so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just, you know, treat it like a meeting. Treat it like a non-negotiable meeting with yourself.
Yeah.
It's a board meeting in the sauna at 9 a.m. every day.
Well, and I mean, sort of, like, I try and, well, if it's local, if it's not on Zoom and people say, oh, do you want to have a meeting? I say, well, can we go for a walk? Just because, you know, it's, I mean, I've written quite a bit about walking, and there's quite a lot of evidence about some of the greatest minds, how they used to build in walks. Like, I think Charles Darwin used to have 3 45-minute walks, and I think Plato used to deliver his lectures when he was walking. But and again, you know, sort of, and I'm going on a bit of a ramble here, but you know, we have sort of, you know, we're in this age of AI, but it seems that we are becoming a lot more open to sort of some of the holistic stuff, you know, that we would have done centuries ago, that we, you know, like having to catch your food, or, you know, it's, I find that the more convenient society gets, then we sort of intrinsically lose part of the human condition.
But I think also because the world that we're living in is so digital now, and, you know, intellect arguably is being taken, appropriated with AI. What are we left with? Well, we're left with our empathy, as you said earlier, and our humanity and our intuition as well. So all of those things that, you know, are a little bit harder to quantify, that are a bit more esoteric, suddenly become a lot more interesting. And that definitely feels like the future. I was talking to someone this morning about intuition in business, and in the world of AI, how do we manage and use our intuition in a way that helps to create better business outcomes? So it's definitely a thing.
I mean, there was something I was thinking about the other day where, my son put on a Bill Withers song. I was like, oh, wow, it's great that he knows this song. But then I was sort of thinking, well, what is his kids going to discover? Because so much of, well, you know, we've got AI generated music, but so many songs that are hits that have sampled something from 20 years ago. And I know music has always been cyclical and people are inspired by other things, but I'm like, we're literally, you know, and we do seem to be almost hearing remixes or, you know, reworkings of reworkings. And it's like, well, yeah, where's that original sample going to come from in 10, 20 years' time?
I think it's a fair point. And you have to hope that subcultures bloom again, you know, the ones, because that's the way it's always happened, you know, the mass becomes, you know, appropriated and all of those things, but there'll be some weird bunch of kids who get together and make something really cool, and it blows up. You know, and obviously that's changed quite a lot in the last few decades. But, you know, you'd hope that need for difference drives that kind of creativity.
Well, and, you know, sort of shoehorning a plug-in for my business, but, you know, like people are like, why do you want to set up a podcast studio when, you know, people can just do it online? And I'm like, well, every time you go on LinkedIn and well, you know, my other podcast, Man Up, Man Down, is online, but it's like everyone just in their bedroom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, are we turning that point where people are like, actually, if I'm going to do a podcast, I want it to be more real.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could have done this online and it would have saved you an hour and a half round trip. But, well, you know, I've certainly got a lot more out of it than if it had been online, and I hope you too.
Yeah,
have too,
absolutely.
Sandra.
I think that it can't be underestimated, the power of in-person, you know, like, you know, I think it stimulates your brain in a different way, creates a different connection between people and hopefully to audiences, you know.
Well, I think it's all about nuance, you know, and it's, you know, the same with AI, that it, you know, it doesn't pick up on nuance and, you know, the sort of eccentricities of humankind, you know, it's almost like the flaws or the things that aren't quite perfect. But anyway, I mean, I know, well, as I said, you've come quite a long way to come in, so thank you for that.
Oh, no worries.
We are running out of time. I mean, well, if people do want to find out more about you, where can they find out?
So the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn, Sandra Peat. I think that's the best start point to then discover if you're interested in coaching. You can see more about my coaching offer or my consulting offer around brand behaviour. Or if you want to see some podcasts or a bit more learning and insight, that's the place to go.
Okay, awesome. So now I've sort of asked you to wrap up and think of more questions, but maybe we could have a round two sometime.
Maybe. Oh, it's super fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.